What happens when absolute power over an army lands with a 19-year-old who has never fought a day? Rome ran that experiment once, and the parchment is still legible. Honorius was emperor of the West at 10. By 19, he held the final word, on parchment, over every legion in Italy and Gaul. Picture Ravenna, late summer, 408. A scribe's desk, a lamp, one sheet of parchment, the ink still wet. No mob, no coup, just hands, in order, a clerk's, a courtier's, a boy emperor's, and last, the soldier's. Every legion answers to a chain of command, every chain to a court, and every court to whichever hand holds the pen. On the 22nd of August, on Honorius's own order, soldiers executed Stilicho, the general who had held the western frontier for 2 decades. Forget the siege everyone already knows. Start with the pen that made it possible. Welcome to the Tactical Historian, where battles are read like blueprints. Go back earlier that year to the general who ran the machine. Before a 19-year-old could sign a single order, someone had to build the hand that held the pen. The Western Empire had a machine for exactly this, a machine for governing when the emperor was a child. When Honorius took the throne at 10, the throne came with a keeper. That keeper was the office of Magister Militum, the master of soldiers, the general who commanded the field armies of the West in the emperor's name. For over a decade, one man held that office. His name was Stilicho, a half-Vandal commander who had climbed through the frontier armies and married into the imperial family. He was the regent, legally the guardian of the boy emperor, and in practice, the only hand on the Western defense. The emperor supplied the name. The magister supplied the judgment the boy did not have. And for a while, it held. A second Gothic army was turned back at Verona, and the frontier went quiet again. In the spring of 402, the Gothic king Alaric drove into northern Italy, and Stilicho caught him near a town called Pollentia, broke the Gothic column, and even recovered captives from the imperial household. This was a regency that could still win. One life held every joint of it together. Take that life out, and nothing above the boy could tell him no. Pull that one man out, and the paperwork does not stop. It just stops being checked. 6 years later, the same signature had a different name on it, and no general left to catch it. So, the order itself, not the killing, the paper that authorized it. The man who put the word before the 19-year-old had never held a field command. Olympius, master of the offices, who ran the palace. Day after day he fed the boy one word wearing the shape of counsel: traitor. Follow it through the chancery. On the 13th of August, 408, the troops at Tichenum mutinied, and Stilicho's supporters were cut down in the streets, not by a battle, by an order dressed as fact. Stilicho took sanctuary in a church at Ravenna under a written guarantee. Then, the second order, the real one, arrived. On the 22nd, on Honorius's own order, they took him. Olympius inherited the dead general's command within weeks. The courtier who had never led a soldier now moved the markers himself, and the frontier answered to a man who had only ever signed for it. Here's the question the after-action reports skip. If the general was so clearly worth more than the courtier, why did nobody stop the boy's hand? Because no one was left with the standing to stop it. A 10-year-old had inherited a keeper. A 19-year-old had inherited no one. The regency was built to survive a child. Never that child grown, the seal in his fist and no hand above it. There was no cheap side. Keep the half-Vandal general and risk the throne. The fear Olympius fed, that Stilicho meant to crown his own son, was not, to a frightened court, unreasonable. Keep him, and the one general who had held the frontier for 2 decades keeps holding it. Watch the delay work. The court had traded Milan for Ravenna, an island moated by swamp, blind to the country it signed away. Within weeks they hunted down Stilicho's son, the very boy Olympius had named for the throne, the rumor now answered by a corpse. Then the Senate condemned the general's remaining partisans, one by one. A regency's promise is that someone above the child can be wrong out loud and corrected. So the chain kept signing, kept condemning, deaf to the one voice that used to correct it. Now count what the signature bought, step by step. Stilicho was the only man the Gothic troops trusted to keep their families safe. Remove him, and the court no longer felt bound to the men he had vouched for. So, the sources say, Roman garrisons turned on the households billeted beside them, killing the wives and children of the Gothic soldiers still serving under the eagle. So they left, roughly 30,000 veterans, marching out in one wave, straight to Alaric, king of the Visigoths, already outside the frontier with an army of his own. And follow the loop back to its head. The court signed the order fearing the general would seize the state, and by signing, it armed the man who would bring the state to its knees. One honest concession. The fear was not pure invention. A half-vandal general married into the imperial house did hold power a jealous court had reason to watch. But watching is not killing. By the end of 408, Alaric was camped outside Rome, and the Senate bought him off with 5,000 pounds of gold, 30,000 of silver, 4,000 silk tunics. That was the price of the paper. It bought 2 more years. So here's the answer. Absolute power in a 19-year-old with no one above him breeds no legendary tyrant. It breeds paperwork that outlives judgment. On the 24th of August, 410, Alaric's Goths breached the Salarian Gate, and marching with them were the 30,000 veterans the court had driven out 2 years before. Rome's first fall to a foreign army in 800 years. Weigh the precedent. Valentinian III, crowned at 6, ruled 2 decades through his mother. His regency kept its keeper for longer, at least. Honorius removed his at 19. Give Stilicho his due, too. For 2 decades, he read the frontier better than anyone and bought the West 20 years it had not earned. Rome still held several 100,000 souls the morning the gate gave way. A living city, not a ruin. The signature meant to command the West bought only smoke, not one legion sent to the wall. The pen that ordered a general dead could not order a single man to hold the gate. While Rome burned, the emperor who had ordered his general's death stayed behind Ravenna's marshes. He never marched to the city. Power without a hand above it does not learn it is wrong until the ground it stands on is on fire. So the real question is not whether Stilicho was dangerous. It is this: what should have stood between a 19-year-old and his own signature? Next time, Hannibal in Italy, 16 years unbeaten, and the one thing he could not read. This is The Tactical Historian, where battles are read like blueprints.